When Ethan Caldwell was ordered to remove his rare 1969 Ducati Scrambler from his own driveway, he couldn't believe someone had the audacity to call a $500,000 collector's bike junk. But HOA President Linda March wasn't just a bureaucrat, she was a power-hungry tyrant obsessed with controlling every inch of the neighborhood. What she didn't know, Ethan wasn't just a Ducati enthusiast, he was the CEO of Ducati North America, and her little act of pettiness was about to cost her everything. But just wait until you hear how her thirst for control led to the most expensive mistake of her life, and why the internet now calls it the revenge of Ducati. Ethan Caldwell had always preferred the quiet, not in the boring sense. He had no interest in blending into the background, like the other homeowners in this overly polished, painfully artificial high-end gated community. But after years of dealing with pointless neighborhood politics, he'd learned to keep his distance. He paid his dues, followed the basic rules, and, in return, he expected one thing to be left the hell alone. That expectation shattered the moment he found the letter stuffed in his mailbox. It was printed on that same self-important HOA letter they used to find people for slightly overgrown lawns or having the wrong shade of beige on their garage doors. But this was a whole new level of absurdity. Mr. Caldwell, it has come to the board's attention that your motorcycle currently stored in your driveway does not align with the aesthetic standards of our community as per Section 14B of the HOA agreement. All vehicles must be in compliance with community appearance guidelines. We kindly request that you move it from public view within 72 hours to avoid further action. Ethan read it twice, then a third time. The word sat there smug and ridiculous, like a chihuahua in a designer purse, unsightly. Vehicle: the 1969 Ducati Scrambler. His pride and joy, a priceless collector's item, was being treated like some rusted-out junker rotting on cinder blocks. The bike wasn't just rare. It was one of the last of its kind, a piece of history, restored to perfection, its golden tank gleaming in the sunlight like atrophy. And these people thought it was an eyesore. At first, Ethan laughed because surely this was a joke. Some ho flunky, with nothing better to do, had gotten a little too ambitious and thought they could bully him into hiding a machine that was worth more than their entire HOA fund. But then reality set in. This wasn't a joke. Anger hit fast, sharp, and unshakable, the kind of anger that doesn't cool down, the kind that builds. So that's how Ethan found himself storming into the next HOA meeting. A man on a mission. The board had already gathered 6 middle-aged suburbanites who had somehow appointed themselves the rulers of all things property-related, and at the head of the table, dressed like she was about to host a segment on daytime television, sat Linda March, President, suburban dictator, the undisputed queen of neighborhood micromanagement Ethan had dealt with. Her kind before the type that lived for rules and regulations, who got a rush out of telling other people what they could and couldn't do. The kind of person who saw power in pettiness. Linda barely looked up as Ethan walked in, flipping through a stack of documents like she had actual important business to attend to. The room was filled with the same type of people. Residents who thought they were influential because they had a say in whether Christmas lights could stay up past January. Ethan planted himself right in front of them, letter in hand. Let's talk about this. Linda didn't blink. Mr. Caldwell, we in the middle of. He dropped the letter onto the table. My Ducati. What the hell is this nonsense? Now she did look up, but instead of concern, there was boredom. In her expression, a smug kind of patience, the kind that said, I deal with difficult people all the time, and you're just another one on the list. This is a violation of community standards. She said, voice, smooth, rehearsed. We uphold a certain image here. Ethan almost laughed, an image that doesn't include motorcycles. He shot back Linda's lips, pursed like he had personally insulted. Her beige-on-beige age home decor were trying to maintain property values. Mr. Caldwell, she continued, her voice dripping with condescension, our neighborhood has a reputation to uphold. I'm sure you understand Ethan had spent his entire career navigating corporate boardrooms, dealing with executives who would cut deals worth millions over expensive dinners. He recognized when he heard it. This wasn't about property values. This was about control. Linda didn't like not being obeyed. And Ethan, he didn't take orders from people who'd nothing better to do than police driveways. He could have backed down. He could have moved the bike into the garage and been done with it. That's what most people did, give into the insufferable bureaucratic nonsense just to avoid a fight. But Ethan wasn't most people. He looked Linda dead in the eye. No, the word landed like a slap. Linda's expression twitched a small crack in the carefully curated mask of HOA authority. You refuse to comply, that's exactly what I'm saying. Her jaw tightened. Mr. Caldwell, I suggest you reconsider. If the motorcycle is not removed within 72 hours, further action will be taken. Ethan leaned forward. Try it. Silence settled over the room. The other board members shifted uncomfortably, clearly not prepared for an actual confrontation, but Linda, she was too deep in her own power trip to back down. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Very well, the meeting moved on, but Ethan barely heard it. He had already decided the bike was staying exactly where it was. If the HOA wanted a fight, they were going to get one. And Linda, she had no idea who she was messing with. Ethan was yanked from sleep by a sound that shouldn't have been there. A low metallic crunch, like something heavy being dragged where it shouldn't be. His mind took a second to catch up, still fogged with sleep, but his gut was already ahead of him, screaming something was wrong. He bolted upright, heart hammering as he shoved open the blinds. The driveway empty. The Ducati was gone. For a split second, his brain refused to process. It gone. No, that was impossible. He had parked it there last night. Samey, as always, locked secure right outside his own damn house. The adrenaline hit like a hammer to the chest he threw on. The first shirt within reach and was out the door before he even had shoes on. Feet slamming against the pavement as he scanned the street. No tire marks, no broken locks, no sign of a break-in. Which meant one thing: not stolen. Toad, the realization didn't bring relief, it brought something worse. Because there was only one group of people who had the power to pull something like this. The damn HOA? Ethan's fingers clenched into fists as he sucked into a breath, forcing himself to think he needed answers, and he needed them now. His first instinct was to storm straight to Linda's house. But no. He needed to know exactly what he was dealing with first. He grabbed his keys, jumped into his truck and called. The only place the HOA could have sent the bike, the local impound lot. The phone rang, and then, yeah, a voice finally answered. Bored and already done with his day. My motorcycle. Ethan grounded out Ducati Scrambler. Gold tank was it brought in. The guy on the other end yawned. Let me check. A pause. Keys clacked in the background. Then, oh yeah, that thing came in a few hours ago. A few hours. They had taken it in the middle of the night. Ethan's grip tightened around the steering wheel. Is it in one piece? Another pause, then a hesitation. I mean, depends on what you mean by one piece. That was all he needed to hear. Ethan slammed the gas. 15 minutes later, he pulled into the lot, tires kicking up dust as he threw the truck into park, and jumped out before the engine even stopped running. The place was exactly what he expected. A rundown, barely legal impound lot on the outskirts of town. The kind of place that didn't give a damn about anything as long as they got their fee. The chain-link gate was half broken, sagging under its own weight. Rows of cars, bikes, and trucks sat behind it. Some looking like they had been here for years, others still fresh with shattered glass and dented frames, and then his breath, caught in his throat. There it was, or at least what was left of it. The Ducati had been dropped, mishandled, wrecked. It lay on its side, the Goldenga's gas tank crushed inward. Its once pristine chrome now a mangled mess of bent metal and deep gouges. One handlebar was snapped clean off the front wheel, twisted at an angle that should have been impossible. Ethan couldn't move, couldn't breathe. He had poured years into that bike. It wasn't just a motorcycle. It was a piece of history, a machine with soul, and now it looked like something that had been dragged behind a truck and left for dead. A shadow moved beside him. The impound manager, a short, balding guy with an energy that screamed, "Not my problem," leaned against the fence and shrugged. Yeah, that's how. It came in. Ethan's jaw locked. "You let them to wit like this?" The guy snorted. "I don't ask. Questions. HOA called us, said it was abandoned property. We just pick it up, abandoned. They had the audacity to call it abandoned. Like he had just left it. They're like, it wasn't his own damn property parked in his own damn driveway." Something inside him snapped. His whole life Ethan had been the guy who avoided pointless fights, who let small things go, who picked his battles. But this was war. He could already hear Linda's smug, self-satisfied voice in his head, the way she tilted her head just slightly, that fake polite smile stretching across her face as she pretended she had nothing to do with it. "Mr. Caldwell, I suggest you calm down." Oh, he was calm, and that was the worst thing Linda could hope for, because Ethan wasn't just angry anymore. He was ready to burn their entire operation to the ground. Ethan Caldwell wasn't just some guy with a fancy motorcycle. He wasn't just a collector, a man with a nostalgic love for vintage machines. He wasn't just another homeowner trying to mind his own damn business in a neighborhood that thrived on control and conformity. He was the CEO of Ducati North America, and Linda March, she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. When the HOA stole and destroyed his Ducati, they hadn't just wrecked a machine, they had trashed a $500,000 collector's item, a bike with history, prestige, something people would kill to own, and they had done it without authorization under the false claim that it was abandoned property, illegal, reckless, stupid. And Ethan, he wasn't the kind of man to let stupid people get away with ruining something they didn't even understand. But first he needed to see the game to the end. So when the next HOA meeting rolled around, Ethan walked, in calm, controlled, as if nothing had happened at all. The boards sat in their usual spots. Tight little blazers, stiff collars, the same self-important expressions. And at the head of the table's mug as ever was Linda. She knew. Of course she knew. And yet she barely glanced up, as if he were nothing more than an insignificant detail in her perfectly manicured world. Then, with all the confidence of a petty dictator, she finally spoke. "I hope you understand now, Mr. Caldwell," she said, her voice dripping with that artificial politeness the kind people use when they think they've won, "that this is a community." She continued, tilting her head, "Not a junkyard. A junkyard," she called his Ducati, a 1969 Ducati SKR Ambler, one of the rarest bikes in existence, a piece of junk. Ethan felt the corner of his mouth twitch, not in anger. No, anger had long since burned away, leaving behind something colder, sharper. "Oh," he said, smiling right back, "there, I understand perfectly." Linda's smile flickered just for a fraction of a second, and then Ethan stood up, left without another word, no argument, no threats, No shouting, because he didn't need to fight in that room. He was about to end her entire world from the outside. The moment Ethan got home, he made one phone call. Ducati's legal team was one of the best in the country, because when you ran a company worth billions, you needed sharks, not lawyers. And when those sharks heard that an HOA had unlawfully seized and destroyed one of their most valuable collectors' pieces, the reaction was instant. The lawsuit drafted within hours. The amount $1, $2 million in damages. The case open and shut. Because here's the thing about HOA board members. They love their little power trips, their ridiculous fines, their meaningless rules. But what they don't love, real legal battles. And Linda, she was about to find out exactly how deep she had sunk herself 2 weeks later. The hammer dropped. The entire HOA board received a beautifully crafted legal notice printed on thick, unforgiving letterhead stamped with the weight of Ducati's corporate legal team. The words inside were sharp, precise, lethal: a cease and desist order, followed immediately by a lawsuit for property damage, theft and destruction of private property. The amount $1, $2 million in damages. Not a typo. Not an exaggerated demand. That was the actual calculable cost of what the HOA had done. $500,000 for the Ducati. The rest punitive damages, legal fees, and a generous helping of financial hell for Linda March and her little HOA empire. By the time the board fully processed what was happening, Linda was already losing it. This is insane. She shrieked at the emergency HOA meeting, her manicured nails digging into the lawsuit documents, as if she could shred them into non-existence. Her voice cracked, high-pitched and desperate, because for the first time in years, she wasn't the one issuing fines and threats for once. She was on the receiving end. Ethan just sat back, arms casually crossed, watching her unravel like cheap fabric in a hurricane. "I don't know, Linda," he said smoothly, barely masking the amusement in his voice. "Seems fair to me. My junkyard bike was worth more than your entire house." Linda's face twisted somewhere between rage and sheer panic, because that part that wasn't an exaggeration. She lived in a $900,000 house. The Ducati Azali over $500,000. And when the court fees, punitive damages stacked up, this lawsuit would gut her, and she knew it. They all knew it. The rest of the HOA board members sat frozen, staring. The legal documents like they were ticking time bombs, because they were the HOA had operated on fear and control, 4 years bullying residents into submission with fines and arbitrary rules. But this was real. This wasn't some homeowner getting a citation for a mailbox being the wrong shade of taupe. This was a $1 million dual lawsuit backed by a corporate powerhouse, and suddenly, nobody wanted to be involved. Within days, the HOA crumbled. Board members quit overnight, not even bothering with formal resignations. Just emails and text messages saying they wanted nothing to do with this mess. The HOA's once feared authority collapsed like a sand castle in high tide. But the real fun that started when the homeowners turned against Linda. For years, people had gritted their teeth and paid up, afraid to challenge her, afraid of what she might pull next. But now that they saw her losing, they started digging, and what they found: missing funds, misused HOA dues, illegal fines, years of financial corruption. All swept under the rug until now. Linda had spent years ruling with an iron fist, but now her own neighbors were sharpening the guillotine. Linda tried to fight, tried to scramble, to argue, to dig her claws into whatever shred of authority she thought she still had. She hired a lawyer, some HOA specialist type who probably thought this was just another petty dispute over a mailbox or a fence. But this wasn't about offense. This was a $1 million lawsuit, and Ethan's legal team, they were sharks no worse. They were a goddamn great white feeding frenzy, and Linda had walked straight into the water, bleeding arrogance and desperation the moment the case hit the courtroom. It was over before it even began. Ethan sat calmly in his tailored suit, completely unbothered, while Linda sat across from him, sweating bullets, her lawyer, whispering frantic damage control in her ear. She knew she was screwed, because the second the judge looked at the Ducati's valuation, $500,000, his expression shifted from bored patience to instant, unforgiving judgment. HOA rules. They didn't mean a damn thing in this room. What mattered was theft, destruction of property, gross negligence, and Ethan's lawyers. They laid it all out like a carefully sharpened knife: how the HOA had no legal grounds to tow the bike, how they had lied and called it abandoned property, how they had sent it to a third-rate impound lot, where it had been dropped, wrecked, destroyed, beyond repair, and the best part, the paper trail. Every email, every complaint, every condescending message from Linda herself, all of it documented, printed, and presented as evidence by the time Ethan's team was done dissecting them. The HOA's entire defense crumbled into dust. Linda's lawyer tried. God, did he try? He brought up community regulations, HOA guidelines, property aesthetics, every desperate argument in the book. But the judge wasn't having it. The ruling was swift, brutal, absolute. The HOA was found liable. They were ordered to pay the full $2 million in damages. And that's when the real nightmare began. Because the HOA finances, they were already a dumpster fire: years of mismanaged funds, hidden costs, shady budgeting. They didn't have anywhere near that kind of money. So where did the money come from? Linda. Her house. The only way for the HOA to pay off the lawsuit was to liquidate assets, and the biggest asset. They had the HOA president's home. The moment the news broke, the neighborhood exploded. People who had spent years suffering under Linda's ridiculous self-serving rules, they celebrated like it was a national holiday. Someone popped champagne in the cul-de-sac. Someone else brought out lawn chairs just to watch the movers haul out Linda's overpriced furniture. And Ethan, he didn't just win, he became a legend. Neighbors started calling him the Hoe Slayer, the man who had brought down the queen of petty power trips with nothing but a wrecked Ducati and a damn good legal team. But Ethan, he wasn't done yet. Ethan didn't need another house. He had a perfectly fine one already. But when Linda's foreclosed home hit the market, sitting there like a humiliating monument to her downfall, he saw an opportunity. And Ethan, he was a man who appreciated irony, so he bought it out of pure, unfiltered spite. Not to live in, not to rent, to turn it into a Ducati showroom. Because if there was one thing sweeter than watching Linda lose everything, it was making sure the last thing she saw before leaving was everything she had tried to destroy on full display. Behind polished glass, a shrine to her failure, the transformation happened fast. Within weeks, contractors were ripping out the bland beige carpeting, the overpriced farmhouse decor, the stale soulless est, the tea-a-tick that Linda had no doubt thought screamed. Luxury walls were knocked down, high-end lighting was installed, glass panels replaced windows, turning the entire first floor into an exhibition space, and right there in the center of it all sat a 1969 Ducati Scrambler, rebuilt from the wreckage, every shattered, twisted piece, painstakingly restored by the best hands in the business. But this wasn't just our restoration. Ethan had made sure of that. The tank custom fitted with gold plating, the frame polished, reinforced, sleek. The bike that Linda had tried to erase was now worth more than ever. Its value tripled just from the notoriety of the lawsuit alone. People came just to see it. Motorcycle enthusiasts, reporters, even Ducati XX from Italy flew in just to stand in the middle of what used to be Linda March's living room and admire the most infamous Ducati Scrambler in existence. And Linda was forced to watch all of it unfold, forced to pack up. What little she had left, humiliated, bankrupt, reduced to just another casualty of her own arrogance. The neighborhood didn't shed a single tear. If anything, they celebrated because Linda's downfall wasn't just about the lawsuit. It was the end of the HOA's reign of terror. The board had collapsed completely with no one insane enough to try and resurrect it. Without its fear-based rule, the neighborhood breathed again. People stopped policing. Each other's lawns stopped living in constant fear of citations for ridiculous, arbitrary rules. The HOA dead Linda gone, and Ethan he rode his restored Ducati every damn morning, parking it right in the driveway, where it gleamed under the sunlight completely untouchable. Months later, the grand opening of the Caldwell Ducati Heritage Museum was nothing short of a spectacle. What had once been just another beige cookie-cutter suburban home, a symbol of Linda March's iron-fisted rule over the neighborhood, was now a shrine to rebellion, restoration, and poetic justice. Where there had once been cold, lifeless decor and overpriced HOA-approved furnishings, they were now gleaming motorcycles, each with its own history, its own story. The living room gone, in its place a showroom floor lined with classic Ducatis, their polished chrome catching the sunlight through the massive glass panels Ethan had installed, in place of windows, but at the very center of it all. The crown jewel of the museum sat the 1969 Ducati Scrambler. The same bike Linda had tried to erase. Now it stood on a raised platform displayed like a work of art, its once shattered frame fully restored, stronger than before its golden-plated tank glowing under the showroom lights like a trophy. Hundreds of people had come to see it. Ducati enthusiasts, collectors, bikers, journalists, even a few industry executives from Italy, all gathered at what had once been ground zero for the pettiest HOA. In America, the driveway, every spot where the Ducati had been taken, was now packed with hundreds of motorcycles, their owners having traveled from across the country just to be part of the history. Riders leaned against their bikes, swapping stories, revving engines in excitement. The entire neighborhood had shown up too, some out of curiosity, some to celebrate, others just to witness the final nail in the coffin of the HOA that had once ruled their lives. Ethan stood at the entrance watching it all unfold, coffee in hand, wearing the relaxed, satisfied expression of a man who had won not just the battle, but the war. He barely had to say a word because the story had already told itself the moment the lawsuit had hit the internet. It had exploded first. It was a viral Reddit post detailing how an HOA had destroyed a priceless Ducati and how its owner had in turn dismantled the entire HOA. Then came the articles, the YouTube videos, the think pieces on HOA corruption and how power-hungry board members ruined neighborhoods. By the time major media outlets caught wind of the internet had already given it a name, the Revenge of Ducati. And now it was real. Reporters swarm the entrance microphones in hand, their questions coming rapid fire. How does it feel to turn an HOA's power trip into a legendary museum? Did you ever expect your lawsuit to go viral? What do you have to say to the thousands of people calling this the Revenge of Ducati? Ethan took it all in the cameras, the crowd, the distant hum of engines. And then with a slow, amused shake of his head, he simply said, "I just wanted to park my bike in peace." The crowd roared with laughter. The cameras flashed, the moment cementing itself in history. Because this wasn't just about a motorcycle. This wasn't just about one man taking down an HOA. This was a warning to every power-tripping HOA president, every petty enforcer, every self-righteous suburban overlord who thought they could dictate how people lived their lives. Ethan hadn't just won, he had changed the game. And Ash stood there watching riders flood into what had once been Linda March's personal kingdom. He couldn't help but think some victories they're worth every damn. Second of the fight. The irony: Ethan's battle with the HOA didn't just end with a personal victory, it exploded into something much bigger. What started as one man fighting against a petty neighborhood dictatorship turned into a global headline, a cautionary tale about abuse of power, corporate retaliation, and the sheer stupidity of messing with the wrong person and Ducati. They thrived, the brand's reputation skyrocketed practically overnight. The lawsuit had blown up online with bikers, car enthusiast huts, and even people who didn't give a damn about motorcycles rallying behind the story. The revenge of Ducati trended for weeks, fueling a surge in Ducati sales across North America. Dealerships reported record numbers, new riders, collectors, and casual enthusiasts all flocking to buy Ducatis, not just because they were legendary bikes, but because they were now a symbol of rebellion. Ethan's battle had turned Ducati into something more than just a brand. It was a statement, a middle finger to bureaucratic overreach, a symbol of standing your ground. When the odds are stacked against you and Ethan, he didn't just ride the wave. He owned it. Interviews, features in major magazines, a partnership with Ducati HQ to sponsor a national campaign against HOA abuse. Because as it turned out, Ethan's case wasn't just a personal grudge match, it was a landmark legal example. HOA reform groups latched onto his lawsuit using ITA's proof of just how corrupt and overreaching these neighborhood associations had become. A year later, multiple states introduced new regulations, tightening the leash on HOAs, reducing their ability to seize or tow personal property without explicit legal authority. Ethan had said, "A precedent," and Linda, she vanished. No more condescending HOA meetings. No more micromanaging the lives of people who just wanted to exist in peace. One day she was a suburban tyrant, the next gone. Maybe she moved to some gated retirement community in Florida, somewhere far away from motorcycles, lawsuits, and the wreckage of her former kingdom. Maybe she tried to reinvent herself, to erase the humiliating downfall that the internet never let Dior. Maybe she just woke up every morning haunted by the sound of a Ducati engine, revving in the distance because Ethan, he was still riding every damn morning, same driveway, same gleaming, gold-plated Ducati scrambler rebuilt from the wreckage, now more valuable than ever. And now with a custom license plate that read, HOA, a question, a joke, a reminder. Justice had been served and the world never forgot.